When did the dream of Janie's life-changing baked goods come to pass? When do you think you found yourself like, I have a problem with alcohol? Did anybody tell you?
One of my second times drinking, it was in the West Village Halloween parade. And I was with like all of my guy friends from high school. Somehow we went to a Halloween party in like Bayside where like the guy was like, you can't bring alcohol into my parents' house. And everybody was like, that sucks. And I just remember being like, yeah, that sucks. Like only having drank once or twice and just, you know, wanting to be part of that crowd.
So when did you find yourself drinking on a daily basis or weed or like what was it that where you found your identity shifting? Because obviously you're a real guy. Okay. So let's, you know what? I don't want to even fucking jump ahead.
Okay.
You grew up on the Upper West Side.
Yep.
Where'd you go to elementary school?
PS 75.
PS 75.
95th and between 95th and 96 on West End, right where the West Side Highway.
I know.
Yeah.
Funnels
on.
One of my very best friends went to elementary school there. But
really?
We're so much older than you. You're not going to know who that
How old are you?
50.
It's not that much older.
How old are you?
At 36.
That's much older.
Yeah.
Much older. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So like you're fucking Upper West Side.
Upper West Side.
You know, get into Stuyvesant.
Yep.
When do you break into and alcohol?
Yeah, I was thinking about that last night because I was listening to one of your previous guests.
What'd you listen to?
It was
that chick Allegra?
No, Slocum maybe.
Yeah, Rachel Slocum.
Yeah. I was listening. I started listening and then didn't finish. Not because I didn't want to finish. It's on my saved, pinned.
Yes.
I think, I mean, like alcohol was always you know, my parents are artists. Like they gave us little glasses of wine when we were kids. You know, part of the dinner party. So it wasn't like alcohol was never this like forbidden fruit. But I think the first time I drank, like to get like to feel the effect or knowing that I would pick up the effect, I was probably like 14 or 15.
What kind of artists were your parents?
They're theatrical designers.
So was it like hippie, free and easy at your house? Everyone's wasted all the time.
I mean, no, they, you know, like theater dinner parties, right? Like, you know, stage directors and actors and, you know.
So people aren't like strung out on
on the floor not as far as I remember. No, okay. I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think so.
So you think the first time, and who were you with when you drank the wine?
I was with a friend of mine I had gone to elementary and middle school with her, and she had moved to Connecticut and she was visiting, and we were inviting this boy over. And I don't remember if it was her idea or my idea, but we were like, okay, let's raid my parents' liquor cabinet. And we took, I don't know, like gin and vodka and something else and like put it in, not even the blender, but like in the food processor with like ice cubes and orange juice and made like, we were like, oh, we're going to make a slushie. And it was like the most, you know, vile, disgusting, like not enough sugar, wasn't good. Drank it, had the boy over, and I think he knew we thought it was so cute and so funny, and he probably thought it was cute and funny. And
I'm sure he did.
Yeah, right. Like two cute little girls, and
you're invited over. They're drinking alcohol.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't think my parents were around, but I think my brother was around, and so we were like hiding it from him.
And you got away with it.
And we got away with it. Yeah. And then after that, I remember like one of my second times drinking, it was in the West Village Halloween parade. And I was with like all of my guy friends from high school. And we went to a Halloween party in like Bayside where like the guy was like, you can't bring alcohol into my parents' house. And everybody was like, that sucks. And I just remember being like, yeah, that sucks. Like only having drank once or twice and just, you know, wanting to be part of that crowd. And then we left that party and went to the West Village where a friend of mine lived, and somehow got a hold of beers and were drinking on the like street corner. And I just remember thinking it was like so wild. I was like, there's cops everywhere and like we're getting away with this.
Right. Well,
and it, like they didn't care about, you know,
Well,
some
20 years
15-year-olds.
ago, right?
Yeah, 20 years, over 20 years ago,
So
probably
that's-
21 years ago.
You know, that was a time, that wasn't such a notable time where young teens were drinking on the street.
No.
So I
No.
think like
paper bagging on the street.
I think you did kind of like pull
Yeah.
something off. I think you should have been proud. I think that's-
I was really proud. Yeah. And I just remember, which I think about all the time now. You know, I drank, I had like such a good time. I probably drank like a beer or a beer and a half. But it was like noticeably more than anybody else drank, like however much I drank or however I reacted to it. And a guy the next day when we were taking the train home, this kid I went to high school with who I knew had a crush on me and I had like no interest in, was like, you know, when you drink differently than everybody else.
He said that to
He
you.
literally said that to me.
He like gave you the
And
AA
like
pamphlet.
yes, like it was like he was like you know, like here's in the 30 questions or whatever. And me being like, he just likes me. He just has a crush on me. He just is like pissed off that like when I drink, I can flirt with other guys who I actually like.
And you were like, he's a fucking idiot.
Right.
And he was probably like Bill Wilson's great grandson or something.
Right, totally. And I'm just like, who is this like teetotaler prude who's like telling me like, you know, like I'm so cute, I'm so funny, I'm so great when I drink. Like, who are you to? And I think he like even put his arm around me. Like it was like very grandfatherly.
Right.
Like I was just like, who the fuck do you think you are?
That's interesting. Because
Yeah.
I think when I was a kid, I was like that guy.
Really?
Because I was too scared to drink.
Yeah.
And I was like uncomfortable to drink. I thought
Yeah.
when people like, I remember when I was in junior high school or high school and girls would smoke cigarettes, I'd be like, you know, you're really not being yourself.
Right.
Like
right.
I
You're
was
trying-
like,
you're really not being yourself.
yeah, I was like this nerd,
Right.
like terrified of everything until I
Yeah.
wound up becoming addict.
Right. Right.
And like,
I mean, that's how it goes.
it's funny how that
Because
goes.
that's kind of how it went for me too. Like I remember my like a family member of mine who was older than me smoking a cigarette, and me being like thinking, well, I was probably like 9 or 10, and she's probably like 13 or 14, and me being like, oh, the commercials say like you should tell a grown up if someone around you is like
Right.
smoking cigarettes, and me being like, wait, should I tell someone? Should I tell a grown up that she's smoking a cigarette?
It's like a tipping point thing. It's like, when do you get to the point where, like for me, it was like I would drink and I got sick. I couldn't drink. Like I
Yeah.
would get too sick.
Really?
And then I like smoked weed and I was like, I like this. And then I was like alone at college and I was like, this is my total identity. I'm done with everything else. It's
Right,
just this
right,
from now
right,
on.
right.
But like,
And like such a quick transition.
it was like I had not, like in my
Yeah.
first 18 years, I had enough identity via my friends and like my little nerdy life that I didn't need to totally become possessed by the stoner universe.
Yeah.
Whereas after 18, I was alone at some frat school in upstate New York, and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to do.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so when did you find like yourself drinking on a daily basis, or weed, or like what was it
Yeah.
that where you found your identity shifting? Because obviously you're a real addict.
Well, you know what's interesting is that when you say all that, like I'm like, I don't remember having an identity before I started drinking. Like it's so interesting to hear you say that, because I'm just like, I think about that for some reason, like as I like 35 is the first year where I'm like, holy shit, like I really feel like I don't know, like I'm aging, and not in a bad way, but I'm just like, it's the first year where I've, you know, felt like this profound difference. And like I've been thinking so much in the past year about how like I don't remember like being like an actual human. Like I don't think I had any opinions or any likes or dislikes or any like discernible like, I don't know, identifying factors about Janie before I got sober.
Were you ever Jane, or was it always Janie?
I was Jane until I was in 8th grade, I think.
Why did it become Janie?
And I'm one of those people who's like, I'm born an alcoholic. I'm born an addict. Like my behavior from like the time I was like crawling is like so, you know, like addict behavior. But I was like really buzzy and fun and like the bossy, like little popular girl until 2nd grade. And then something happened in 2nd grade. And from 2nd grade to like 7th grade, I was like the chunky, shy, like miserable loser.
Do you have
kid.
any idea of what happened?
I have no idea.
It's
like
so
I have
funny
no
to,
idea.
to put these, you know, like you're talking about, I have a 6-year-old daughter and I have a 14-year-old daughter.
Okay.
So like I can observe
like,
this
yeah,
very
yeah.
well in
Yes.
sobriety.
Yeah.
Right. And my 6-year-old daughter, like, whatever, she's fucking going into first grade. You know what I mean?
Worst.
It's like, it's not even the worst. It's like she's like only really, she's getting the hang of
right.
talking.
She's like still a baby.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're talking about by the time you were out of first grade, your life was over in your recollection.
Yeah. I think that like, that's when like that like alcoholic addictive nature hit me. And I was like, you know, overwhelmed with like anxiety and fear. Like by the time I was in second grade.
That's crazy.
I was literally, and I remember some of like my most like formative earliest memories are just like being paralyzed by anxiety and fear. And just, you know, like I have this story about like I borrowed scissors from Ruben in third grade and they were red scissors. And at the end of arts and crafts, he asked for his scissors back and I didn't know where they were. And my grandma was staying with us. And the whole weekend Woolworths was still around.
Yeah.
The whole weekend I made her like go to every Woolworths to find red scissors and like wouldn't tell her why. Like I was just like, I really need red scissors, right? And I'm thinking if I get these red scissors
He'll
back,
never know.
He'll never know. You know, we could not find red scissors. She's like, why can't you sleep? Why are you not eating? Like, why are you so obsessed with red scissors? Like, I'm incapable of telling her why I need these red scissors. Monday morning rolls around. We're back in arts and crafts class. Ruben has his fucking red scissors. And it's like, that was like the next literally 18 years of my life until I got sober was like that, like pursuit of like red scissors, but unable to tell someone why I needed the red scissors.
That's an incredible story.
It's crazy.
That's the least dopey story that I get the most out of because it really is like that neurotic. I think we share, I have a sense, like I don't know you at all, but just talking to you for a minute, we have a similar like weird
makeup
thing. I don't usually say to people that they remind me of me.
Okay.
But you have a thing in you, like this weird sparkly, like, do you know what I don't know. Like, it's just a weird thing that I'm sensing. But maybe
I'll take it as a compliment.
Yeah. You
or something.
You also like seem very cousinly to me.
Cousin. Yeah. I could see that.
I get some cousinly vibes.
Okay.
Is that weird of me to say?
No.
I definitely don't want to make.
Think of the Bear, where they call each other cousin. I mean, there are some cousins in the Bear, but they call it. Have you been watching the Bear?
No.
Okay.
No. I watched the
Don't
first
watch
season.
it. It'll make your anxiety go.
Why?
It's just it's hard to watch.
Is it as good? Do you believe in the Bear? I heard season 2 was not that great.
Season 2 was amazing.
Really?
Season 2 was like me like reliving my past like 3 years of entrepreneur life. Season 3 is not as good.
All right, we're jumping.
Okay,
I'm
fuck
ruining,
the Bear.
I'm
Fuck the
ruining
Bear.
this whole
Let's
show.
talk about scissors.
Okay, so Ruben's red scissors. You're obsessed, neurotic.
Yep.
Sure, you've destroyed everything.
Right.
By stealing.
I ruined Ruben's life. Like ruined Ruben's life.
And you were very young.
Yeah.
I remember having like low self-esteem in those years.
Yeah.
But I also went to like nerdy public school in Manhattan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, me too. But
exactly. I mean, I think that that plays a part.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Very interesting. So like
I was like the nerd among the nerds. Like I wasn't like.
No, I was definitely the cool one.
See, I wasn't.
I was like the cool disaster.
Okay.
Like total mess, shoes totally untied, like
wrong feet.
I wouldn't go that far, but I like did not have it together.
I could see that for you.
I didn't have it together, but I was well liked.
Yeah.
But not, particularly appreciated by anybody.
Okay, well liked, but not particularly
I was well liked, and I had my little crew.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I've diagnosed myself as like, I was not without a personality or without opinions.
Yeah.
I was totally codependent on my crew, and it shifted from crew codependency to dependency.
That makes sense. Yeah.
You just went right to alcoholic party girl 15.
Yeah. Yes. It became my identity. It was like that, it like saved me, right? Like it like gave me, and I'm sure I had opinions and feelings, but like I don't remember, like I really don't remember anything except like just overwhelming like self-hatred, self-doubt, low self-esteem. And I never had trouble except for maybe like a couple of years in between 2nd and 7th grade. Like I never had trouble making friends. Like I even in those years, I still had like core friends, but I just like don't remember like any like, I don't know, like character in there. But you asked about Jane to Janie. In 8th grade, I went and like 7th grade was not a great year. and 8th grade, but I was never like bullied, like just like, you know, like a little bullied. And 8th grade, I went to live in Kenya for half a year with my aunt and uncle who were like working in Kenya. And I was like, okay, this is
coffee
amazing.
plantation?
No, but I went to school on a coffee plantation. They were working like for the government. So like nice house, gated fence, you know, like cook. And I remember being like, this is my opportunity to like change who I am.
Right.
Like it really was. And it was such a spur of the moment thing. My brother was supposed to go.
How old were you?
I was like 12 or 13.
Right.
So I was
new
like,
girl.
Yeah. New name. And it was just such a like, because I think about myself as a kid and I'm like, I was so full of anxiety. I was so codependent. I was so whatever. But then I was doing these like wild things, like being like, yeah, send me to Kenya, like without my family for, you know, 6 months, which is so like, I can't relate those two like Janies to each other.
But I can relate it to like addict.
Yeah. Right. Like let me get out of here.
And I'm willing to do anything to be in a totally different place.
Right.
Like be a super on the Lower East Side that becomes a addict who's homeless.
Right. It was actually opposite. I became a super when I got sober. But we'll get into that.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because then you get a place to live.
Exactly.
I just want to hear how did you know how to fix plumbing and stuff?
I don't know about plumbing, but
the ring on my washing machine isn't working.
I'm really they don't have nobody has washing machines
in the building, not downstairs.
No, they're all walk-ups.
So they're all going to the laundromat.
Yeah, they're all going to the laundromat. They're all paying like $5,000 for like a shitty 1-bedroom and going to the laundromat.
I dated this girl who was in one of those squats.
Yeah.
And I feel like
I don't know if those don't really exist anymore.
They do,
really?
But they turned into like you own them.
Now they own them because it was like squatters' rights. This is like what Wrench is about, right?
Exactly. But she had a washing machine.
Okay, that's pretty rare.
And she had a super, and I think her super was named Pastrami. And lived across the hall.
Pastrami the super.
I think so. I think he had dreads. He was one of these white dready guys. But
his name was actually Pastrami?
And I think she called him Paz.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's the story.
Paz is short for Pastrami.
If memory serves me at all. So were you like party girl in New York? Were you like going to clubs? Were you going to shows? Or were you just drinking?
No, like by the time, you know, I even like in high school, like I was a good girl. I was always a rule follower. I never had a fake ID. I didn't pick up at all, like not even weed until I was probably like 21. Didn't try anything like until I was probably 21, 22. I don't know. And I first tried to get sober when I was 23 and didn't get sober till 25. So it was like a really quick, like the, you know, it was quick, and it was, and like alcohol was like always my primary substance. Like I just wanted to like not be present. Like I just wanted to pass out. I just wanted to like not be, I just didn't want to be here. But like I wasn't, I remember my dad saying to me, it's like every time you pick up a drink, you're trying to commit suicide. And me being like, I'm not suicidal.
When did he say that?
Like probably half a year before I got sober. So probably when I was like 24 and like out on the streets and just not, you know, but like it was, I was never except for maybe like, I don't know, a couple times in high school. Like I never drank or used with the intent of like having fun. Well, maybe that was my intent, but like deep down inside, it was like, I'm going to drink till I'm oblivious. Yeah.
Right. And one thing that I'm always interested in, and I never talk about too much anymore, being 50 and living on Long Island, but growing up in Manhattan,
yeah.
Like I grew up in Manhattan. I went to Hunter Elementary School and I went to Hunter High School.
Yeah.
And there's strata of all these private school kids that are going out all the time.
Yeah.
You went to PS 75 and you went to Stuyvesant, which is kind of along my track.
Yeah.
Where were you? Like I didn't go out really at all. I went, by the time I was a teenager, like a late teenager, I went to like see bands and stuff.
Yeah.
But like, what were you doing like around teen years in New York City?
I mean, like a lot of like hookah bars.
Really?
CBGB was still around. Like, like drinking at people's houses, drinking on the street. There was this, my junior, senior, and maybe sophomore year, there was this bar called the Abbey Pub on 105th Street. And it was like right near my house. And it was like the meeting of every single like high school student. And
right.
It felt like it was like there were kids from like the Bronx. There were kids from like every private and public school knew that this place did not card. And like I think I probably started drinking there when I was like 15, and it just so happened to be literally a block and a half from my house. But yeah, it was like a lot of, I remember so many hookah bars. Like I don't know. But it was, so I was going out, but it wasn't like I wasn't clubbing. I wasn't like I'm not a clubber. I was never a clubber.
When do you think you found yourself like, I have a problem with alcohol? Did anybody tell you?
No, not until I was probably after college. I went, or maybe my senior year in college.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to University of Michigan. So it's like really easy. Ann Arbor, yeah. So it's easy. Like, you know, kids are drinking at like, you know, football's huge, right? Like I grew up in Manhattan. Like what do I know about like Big Ten schools? And kids are literally tailgating at like 6 a.m. And I'm like, well, that's a problem, right? Like they're waking up at 4 a.m. to like drink and drink all day. Like that's a problem. That's not me.
And you weren't doing that.
And I wasn't like, I was still drunk from the night before. Like I don't know. I'm not an early riser. Like I'm not that dedicated to, like my point of drinking is oblivion, right? So like, why am I going to wake up at 4 a.m. if I'm already asleep?
Yes.
I don't know.
When did you start baking?
I always like, I grew up in a family where we like cook to connect. So like, you know, even like I was really close to my cousins growing up. I spent a lot of time with them, and I don't remember ever once with like our extended family going out to dinner. It was always like somebody or multiple people are going to cook, and we're going to eat around like a communal family table.
So it was always like you cooked, you knew how to bake, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're at Ann Arbor, which is a notorious party school. Yeah. Hash bash and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But you weren't smoking weed or doing drugs.
Wasn't smoking weed or doing drugs. Like I had this, I was afraid of because I knew I would really like it. And so I didn't like, and I probably got into like pills a little bit.
Then?
Yeah.
Like what? Like Ritalin and stuff?
Like Ritalin. And I do have ADHD, but like.
That could be the similarity I detect in us.
Yeah, right. And it's like pretty bad. And I like, you know, finally got a prescription. Actually, first I started stealing from someone. And I was like, oh, this really works for me. And if I take more, it like works in a different way. And then, you know, I had like some back problems. And so like got prescribed like low grade, like painkillers, and like would drink with that even though, but there was a point where I was like, oh, it says don't drink. Like, so there was some line where like I wasn't gonna mix those two until a certain point, probably my senior year. And then
Drinking with painkillers. Because you were like, for whatever reason, even at this point, you're very guarded. You're not going to go over the line.
I'm not going to go over the line. I'm like such a rule follower. Like I said, like I didn't even have a fake ID in Ann Arbor. And I was young for my age. I started college at 17. So I wasn't 21 till like well into my senior year.
Why'd you go there?
It was, honestly, it was like a safety school. Like I couldn't like get it together to apply for colleges in the correct way. And I applied for a BFA in theater performance there and like somehow got in. Like 5 kids from around the country got accepted to this program and somehow I got in. And I was like, oh, I guess I meant to be a theatrical director. Even though like I didn't,
Were you acting in high school and stuff? Was that a thing?
I was directing.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not an actress. I hate being the center of the attention.
But you were like, I'm going to be a director.
Yeah, because I got into the program. And because my parents were, you know, in theater,
Right.
I was like, oh, why not?
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting because
And I'm a control freak.
Right,
like,
right.
I'm artistic.
Right.
It just, and I didn't know what else I wanted to do. And
it was something you knew very well. Like it was in your family and it was like, I could do that.
Yeah, why not?
I never hear about anybody that wants to do that without having some kind of acting piece.
Yeah, interesting.
But I also don't know any directors, so for me to
so
say
you
that is
know.
yeah, exactly. I don't know anything about it.
now the one director that you know.
Now that it's come out, I really don't know anything about it. All right, so you're fucking in Ann Arbor, you're drinking, you're stealing Ritalin, you're getting Ritalin prescribed, your back problems, you're fucking around with Percocets or Vicodins or something.
Yeah.
And what happens to you?
So my senior year, in between and junior year. So I was in this, my freshman and sophomore year, I was in this like crazy relationship with a guy back in New York who went to a, fancy private school here. And he was in college here, and he was like super controlling and super like emotionally, verbally abusive. And I remember my sophomore or freshman year, like something happened where I like kind of cheated on him, and he found out.
Kind of cheated on him.
It was like, it was unfortunate. I don't want to get too much into it, but it was like someone took advantage of me. Right. And so, and now I even say that I'm like gaslighting myself. Right. I'm like, someone took advantage of me when I was passed out, and I'm even like,
how is that cheating on him?
Exactly. That's
like
what's so
raped.
fucked up. That's what's so fucked up is like 17 years later, I'm still gaslighting myself into being like, I kind of cheated. That's wild. I can't believe I said that.
Because you didn't cheat on him.
No, I didn't.
You got like molested, passed out.
Yes,
it's a much different thing.
Exactly. And it was wild because it so happened that this guy was on a baseball team in New York playing Division I baseball.
Your boyfriend or the molester?
My boyfriend.
Okay.
The guy who took advantage of me, his roommate was, I've never told this story. His roommate was best friends with someone on the baseball team with this kid in New York, which is wild, like across the country, Michigan. And somehow like the two things come up. And so this becomes like.
And that's how he found out?
That's how so wild. Isn't that so crazy?
That's unfortunate.
It's so crazy. It's like 4 degrees of separation.
And it's the most specific, unconnected fucking shit ever.
It's like it's crazy.
But I'm hearing more and more like stories like this, like not like this one in particular, but like I have this friend who, and whatever, this is a tangent. I have this friend who's like, borderline, total bipolar, schizophrenic, like total crazy person. And he grew up on the Upper West Side.
Okay.
And he had all these problems, and up till a year ago was totally suicidal. Like was just sending me pages and pages of suicidal ideation or begging me to kill him, like crazy stuff. Yeah. And I've been friends with him since junior year of high school or something.
Yeah.
And I talked to him last night, and he's like better.
Good.
And he's better because he like got a girlfriend and who like who like loves him, and he was like neglected by his parents and not loved and never had love, and like total like scamp, like kicked out of every house he had ever been in. And it turned out this girlfriend had an apartment in the building he grew up in the same apartments the floor up.
Wow.
And it's just
wild.
For no reason. And then my other best friend like made it as this big corporate lawyer, and he married this Swiss girl, and his whole success came from being the contract lawyer for the Swiss bank, totally disconnected from the fact that his wife was Swiss. Wow. So it's sometimes
it's all interconnected.
Sometimes I wonder if life is not just a total simulation, like the Matrix bullshit. Like, how does that even happen? That the guy who fucking takes advantage of you is connected to your boyfriend in New York. It's horrible. But it's just these weird things.
Yeah.
I don't know if my stories actually make any sense.
No. I got you.
It's this weird, like blueprint.
Yeah.
That's
it's
on
all
top
like
of us.
weirdly interconnected.
And we don't know why or how or really, is there a why? Probably
I don't
not.
know.
I'd say no.
I hope not.
Yeah.
At least for that. I don't know.
Well, for everything. So what happens?
Yeah.
He finds out.
So he finds out, and basically like it's this whole like shit show. He found out at the end of my freshman year. And so the summer I go home for my, freshman to sophomore year, and he's just like out of control. Like, you have to call this guy, you have to tell him he's a piece of shit, you have to whatever, you're a piece of shit.
So
like,
he heard the story from the dude.
Didn't. Yeah, he heard the story, and I didn't say like I didn't say like that's not what happened.
The story he heard was, Janie hooked up with this guy.
Yeah. And instead of me being like, no, here's what really happened, I'm just like, I don't remember if I like denied it or was like I was so drunk. Like I just like I wasn't and this is probably like, 20 years ago or however long, 18 years ago, it was different, but like
consent was very different.
Yes, exactly. And so like young females weren't programmed to be like, that's actually not what happened. Like I was just like, I was just like along for the ride now, and just like I am a piece of shit, like you're right, I am a piece of shit, and just like taking that all on, and instead of being like fuck you, like, and leaving, like I'm just like, what can I do? What can I do? How can I make this right? How can I make this right? And so it was like
Rubens red scissors all over again.
It's crazy, like it's totally crazy, and like. And I'm, and it's such like the classic abusive thing. It's back and forth between him being like, and what's crazy is then I ended up that whole summer cheating on him, like actually intentionally with someone. And
the same guy.
No. But like it just like, so this whole summer, like he's telling me like I'm a piece of shit. And we stayed together my sophomore year. And he's like, when you go back to school, you can't drink. And so now it's like my whole sophomore year is controlled drinking. Like, okay, so I'm in this codependent, obsessive relationship with this guy. Like, how can I like drink just enough so that when we talk on the phone at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, every 5 minutes, like he doesn't know I'm drunk. And so, and then at some point he was like, okay, you can drink again. And so it was like this weird, and then I ended up at the end of my sophomore year, he's like, hey, like, I think I want to see other people. And I'm like, great. Like, this is amazing. Like, great. Awesome. Like, and so I like proceed to have this amazing summer where he ends up, it was like the ideal summer for me, because as soon as he says it and as soon as I say great, he's like regretting it. And he's not out having fun. He's chasing me while I'm out having fun, and being like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. And
wait, you're sorry that you agreed to his plot?
No, he's so sorry now.
Right.
Now he's so sorry. I'm out doing whatever the fuck I want, having the best, like, summer of my life, working as a hostess in New York, like 19, adorable, going out, like just having such a good time. And he's being like, I'm sorry, I'm the piece of shit. So it's like this high, right?
So all of a sudden you have
I have the power. Yes. Yeah. And so I go back my junior year of college, and he's like, please, like, can we please stop seeing other people? Can we please be exclusive again? Can we please whatever? And I'm like, no. And he's like, he set some sort of boundary where he's like, fine, like we can't talk. And I'm like, that's fine. So I go back my junior year, and it's like that I have arrived moment, right? Where I'm like, I'm finally
free.
I'm free. Like I'm at University of Michigan. Like I haven't been able to drink fully. I haven't had a lot of friends the past 2 years. Like I'm in this like off-campus apartment, like I'm having a blast. And it's the first time where it was like this consistent. It was like now I'm around people who it's like not just drinking Friday and Saturday, it's drinking like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Because probably that dude had this incredible scaffolding over your whole life where you couldn't do what you wanted to do, which is unfortunate, until all you really want to do is drink alcohol.
I know, yeah. And so it's like for the first time, it's like I'm crossing a line, and I'm just like,
out.
Yeah. And it didn't really catch up with me until like there were a couple things where like, my roommates would be mad at me and I wouldn't know why. And then I would make it right. And I'm like so codependent. I'm such a people pleaser that like I'm always going to make it right. And then my senior year,
it's good to make it right though.
No, it's good to make it right, but like not. I mean,
I
it's
get
like
it. No, for your whole sanity.
It's like I make it right and then I fuck it up right away again. Like I don't actually care about the making it right part at that time. I just care about you not being mad at me.
Right. It's like that lady you had to fire.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's very similar though, right?
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's the same story.
Yes.
And then I say that, and we can circle back to that at the end. But like I have the same needs. Like if things aren't where I want them to be, I'm like, what the fuck? Like I can't live with it.
Yeah.
Like this thing for DopeyCon, like this guy dropping out. I'm like, how am I gonna? He's like, he's not gonna be able to tell me for a week.
Right. So how am I gonna survive for the rest of the next week?
How am I gonna live with that? Yeah. And it's anything like that.
Yeah.
So back to your freedom.
So my senior year, we have this, and this is like the only moment that I can like ever pin back to, and I don't know why it is actually significant, but we have this. I'm living in this off-campus house, and someone turns the heat off to save electricity, when we're all on winter break and like, you know, we're all city kids or whatever, like, or not even city kids. Like we all, you know, are children and we don't know anything about pipes freezing, you know?
Yes.
And
city kids.
Right. And city kids. And so like the pipes freeze and then they unfreeze and then they burst and then our house is flooded. And so like I'm displaced for about a month or two and I'm feeling just so like, you know, I don't have a spot, like all my stuff is ruined. Like I'm just feeling so like fucked up that like, I'm like, okay, how can I like self-soothe? Like I have terrible untreated anxiety. I've had insomnia since I was like, you know, 3. Like, how can I like make this right? And so it's like, then it's like the first time I turned to alcohol as like an actual like solution towards, I don't even know how to say it, but like an actual like medicine.
Like, yeah, like medicating the problem.
Exactly. And not just like medicating like how I feel, but like medicating like
the situation.
The situation. Yeah. And then it's like, you know, I'm sleeping late and I'm not going to class. And it's
where were you staying when you got
I was staying
unhoused?
at a friend. One of my best friends had this huge, he lived in a, you know, house full of guys and he had this huge like attic apartment. And he was like my bestie all through college. And he was like, oh, you know, I have this little alcove you can stay in. So I'm staying with him and probably just like sucking the life out of, you know, his like situation just because like, you know, he's waking up going to like sports practice at like 5 a.m. And I'm like, you know, and he's coming back, going to class, coming back and I'm like still asleep, which I don't know. So I like,
I'm sure it was fine for him. I'm sure he enjoyed the process.
Maybe. I'll see him in a couple months at my wedding, so I'll ask him about it.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll call you at DopeyCon.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Okay. So it's like sort of the first time, and I remember like staying at his house, and like now I'm not around my friends, I'm around his friends, and so if I like drink to black out, like it's more embarrassing, right? And there was this one night where I like got blacked out, came home to his house and like just like sat on his roommate's bed, like total. And I was like one of these people who, when I blacked out, I was like catatonic. Like I was just like unresponsive.
Right.
Like, but like my eyes would be open. Like apparently it was like weird. Like
Scary.
it would be like I'm possessed. Right. And so his friends, you know, he comes and helps me to bed and it's like, and his friend I like thought was really cute too. And so it was like even more mortifying because I'm like, oh, this guy is like so attractive. Like I have a little crush on him. Like I'm just sitting there catatonic on his bed. And it was like the first time where I was like, okay, like I drink with the intent of having fun and feeling good. Right. But I don't remember anything that happened. So if I did have fun, like what's the point? Because I don't remember. And, you know, I wake up and I don't know what I did and people are possibly mad at me or like distressed about something I did. And so like, what's the point? But like, I actively can't stop. Like I logically, I'm like, why am I doing this? Like I'm writing in a journal, why am I doing this? But like actively, like I have no power to like stop that from continuing to play out.
And you can remember very clearly, these are like those first sober, curious thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's also very much an echo of that kid when you're 16 who's like, you don't drink like everybody else.
Right,
and I'm sure
right,
like that
right.
like flashes back and it's
yes.
like, holy shit. And you don't want to be catatonic on, you know, handsome boy's bed. You want to be bubbly and adorable.
Right. Like I want a different situation on handsome boy's bed.
Right.
And so then I learn at some point along the point, like I'd never drank alone. I'd never used alone. And at some point I started smoking weed that year. And I was one of those people who like never liked weed, but would just like smoke it just to be like, I'm not a pothead. Like every time I like smoke and I'm sober, I'm like checking my pulse to see if I'm still alive, but I'm still like, it's preferable over being sober. And so, you know, at some point like that year, I'm like, okay, like, you know, we have weed at our house, like it's communal, but like I can smoke it alone and like hide it. And then, you know, I can drink before we go to pregame because then I'm like a little bit ahead and I'm not having to count. Nobody needs to see. And then at some point I was like, oh, like if you drink a little bit when you're hungover, it feels a little bit better. And so like I'm hide, and these are like the first like baby alcoholic Janie moments where I'm like starting to like sort of like hide it, but it's not totally out of control. Like I'm still, you know,
functional.
I'm still functional. And then at some point I must have had like, what's it called? Like the tremors, like the what
DTs,
is that?
delirium tremens.
Yes, exactly. Delirium tremens, because at some point my
so weird that
year,
word tremens, because you think it's supposed to be tremors, But like it's tremens.
It is tremens. Why is it tremens?
I don't
Maybe
know.
that's some Latin form of tremors.
Maybe. But so what are the first DTs?
I like something weird is happening in like my brain felt like it was shaking, and I somehow related it to the drinking, which is wild because I wasn't even drinking like that much, because I went on to later at 23 and 24 like have really serious DTs, but like at like 21 I'm like somehow I'm like, can drinking cause like a brain bleed? Like can drinking, like I'm like looking up, like I can't quite like figure out what this is.
You want to jump alcoholism to like some sort of like alcohol poisoning or like.
But I like in my Googling, and maybe Google was just like not that good, like, 18 years ago, but in my Google, DTs never comes up.
Right.
Like, and so I'm like, possibly because I had no idea what it was, so I'm not Googling correctly.
It's like Google is enabling your alcoholism.
Right,
it's not mentioning.
It's crazy.
It's not mentioning
it's not mentioning like DTs.
Right.
It's just like, I'm like, can alcohol cause a brain bleed? Like, and so it's so interesting, like flashback a couple of years later, like that's what was happening, was that I was like, at my senior year of college, like once or twice having DTs. And then Did
you find yourself drinking when you did and it cured it, or did you not know? No,
because I didn't know it. And I wasn't my behavior wasn't that alcoholic at the time. It was like, I was learning little tips, like, okay, like I can drink before we go out, or I can drink in the bathroom, but I wasn't like that full blown, like I still had like boundaries for myself and like lines I wouldn't cross. And then I go, I graduate college and I have like no idea what the fuck I want to do. Like I can't, I think I want to be in theater. I think I want to be in film. I have no idea how to write a resume. Paralyzed by fear, like incapable of like applying for a job, end up moving back to Ann Arbor. And it's a total shit show. I moved back home to New York, spent like 3 months in New York. I'm like, oh, Ann Arbor is where it's at. Like I convinced myself that like, that, Detroit had all these, this is so ridiculous. Detroit was giving tax breaks to the film industry for like, they were trying to bring, it was like after the car industry collapsed in like Detroit, and they're trying to bring tax
like
incentives.
$5,000 to every young filmmaker who moves to Detroit.
They're filming these big movies in Detroit. And I'm like, oh, this is where like the movie industry is. Like, let me move back to Ann Arbor, where it's like, really, I just want to move back to like my alcoholism.
And to not like here, it can be overwhelming. You're an adult and you're no, and I mean, I had a similar thing where I was like, I can't do it here because I'm going to disappear. Right. Like it's too big and I'm not going to be able to accomplish anything.
Yes.
And I never felt like that until I was addict. I always felt like, I never felt like I could do whatever I want. Like I never felt like I could run New York, but I never felt intimidated by it either.
Yeah, same. Yeah. That's a good
description.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Because we understand it. But when I was in addiction, I was like, I can't live here. It's too much.
Yeah.
And I think you get to go be a big fish in Ann Arbor who gets to drink like a fish.
Right. And then I'm not even a big fish in Ann Arbor.
Right.
And I like, it was like a total shit show. Like I couldn't even get a job. I somehow ended up like renting 2 apartments, but not paying rent at either, which is like a whole nother.
Why did you rent 2 apartments?
I like... It's like so crazy. It's like such alcoholic behavior. Like, and rent was like $200 a month, So it's like I couldn't even like figure out how to pay $200 a month. So I owed all this back rent. I'm taking my roommate's checks and cashing it, and not even so I'm having 2 people not pay rent. And then like after living on their rent after like 3 or 4 months of this, like the landlord's like, you need to pay rent. So I'm like, okay, let me go find another apartment. But instead of like leaving that old apartment, now I have like 2 apartments.
That's like a dream. That's like a drug dream or something.
It's so crazy. And my like dad ends up coming saving me and be like, can you like, how did you end up in 2 apartments? And like, luckily like the rent is like $200 or $300 a month, but.
So it's like $1,000 problem instead of like a $5,000
like, or
problem.
whatever it would be here, like a $20,000 problem. But I meet this guy, and like my alcoholism's like really out of control. At this point, I'm not even like as bad as it got for me, but I think it really was like for me, like I don't know how to say it, but like the emotional bottom, because I'm still like a person, right? I'm not just like, my whole identity is not just alcoholic, which like happens like a year or 2 later. Like I'm still like an actual person. Like I'm still like a young lady who just graduated from like a really good school, I'm still like
smart.
I'm still smart. I'm still like put together. I'm still like around like
stylish.
Yeah. And I still have like friends. I still have like my family still, I'm still part of my family. And so it was like kind of devastating because I'm like, it was like the first time that there were like consequences for my drinking, where it was like, okay, like the social circle that I have left in Ann Arbor, which was like not my best friend, who's still my best friend now, was living in Ann Arbor. And that was part of the reason I moved back. Was I was like, okay, I can like be around him and that'll provide me like this, I don't know, like emotional support I need. And
codependency.
Yeah. And the thing is the time in which, when I was in New York for like the 3 or 4 months, I was on the phone with him every night for like hours. And so I'm like, okay, I'll move back to Ann Arbor. Like that'll be good. And that was like, that was the bright spot of this 6 months that I spent in Ann Arbor, was him.
But it wasn't a romantic relationship.
It wasn't a romantic relationship at all. Like at all. And it's, like that was like the bright spot and the saving grace of like that time there. But he's like working a 9-to-5 job, and I'm trying to like be like, okay, like I'm, dating people. I'm, trying to like, and my social circle for the most part has gone because like we graduated. And so it's like the social circle I do have there is like in grad school and doing like big things and just like has no time for this bullshit anymore. Or they're like a year younger than me and I just like feel like inferior and like,
what am I doing?
What am I doing? Like, I'm not like person who's like Arrested Development, And so it was just like this like really, really dark time where it was like the first time where I was like, oh, and I actually don't like really suffer from depression. Like I've never, like I suffer from like crippling anxiety and I suffer from insomnia and I have a whole like myriad of like mental ADD, like mental health stuff, but like depression's like not a thing that's been very present in my life. And during this period of time, I was like really depressed. And like, even if I'm not drinking, I'm still sleeping like around the clock.
Well, you know what everybody says about that? It's that alcohol is a depressant.
It really is. I mean, it truly is.
Right.
It's wild. And sort of like everybody in my life is like, you can't behave like this. Like, it's not working. It's not working. Like, and it's embarrassing and it's like causing like, havoc in other people's lives. And I meet this guy, who I like start like dating, and he's sober. And I'm like, there's something, and I'm like kind of disgusted that he's sober, but I'm also like, I've never met a guy with like, he was my age. Like he wasn't like, but he just seemed so much older and he just had this light about him. And I was like, but he was like playful and like, he was like emanating this light.
And he was an alcoholic though.
No, I think he was, I mean, he was sober from other substances.
Okay.
Yes, he was sober. Like he wasn't, I don't think alcohol was his primary substance.
Right. But he was in recovery.
He was in recovery. And he is just like emanating this light. And I'm like, but what do you do? Like, what did you do for your 21st birthday? And he's like, oh, we got like a keg of root beer and then we broke into the public pool. And I'm like, like he's like proving that like you can have a good time when you're sober. But like, and he's like, my friends still drink. It's fine. Like I have friends who are sober. It's fine. Like they get along. It's fine. And I'm just like, how does that work? And like, but like falling for him, right? And just being like, I've never met a guy like this. And of course, like he, of course this is very short lived because like I'm drinking every night till I black out and he's sober.
Right.
Yeah. And he's like, and so he ends up like, I'm living, like the reason I met him is because I'm living with a group of his friends who are all female. And basically they end up like being like, you have to leave this house because you can't stay sober. Like, and you need to be sober. And he's, he ends up writing me this email that I still remember. I wish I had this email somewhere. And of course I deleted it and like never was able to see it again. But it like the subject line was like a piece of unsolicited advice. And then he goes into this like long, really heartfelt, like beautiful email about like what light I have and like how, alcohol seems to really be affecting my life and like his solution, right? The solution that he's found, and that like, if I want a solution, like he can help me find that solution. And I'm just kind of like so mortified. Like, I'm not even like, how dare he? I'm just like so mortified that I'm like, I can never see this person again. You know, like it's not even an option to like.
Do you think it's because he thought you were an alcoholic and you were like, I'm an alcoholic? Like,
I don't even know.
It's just fear.
I think it was just fear and me like being like, oh, this is something good that I lost.
Right.
And I have no way of getting it back. It's gone.
Right.
Like, I mean, who knows what could have happened. But like
it's
in my
funny
mind,
how that goes. It's like, because at some point I need to salvage everything now. But there were points in my life where something like that would happen and I'd be like, it's over.
It's over.
And
like,
it's gone forever.
Yeah, too bad.
And I would never try to salvage it. And
it's not even an option.
It's just interesting how that even happens. So you have
it's like you're crippled.
Right. This glimpse of light, sanity, love, acceptance, future, hope. And you're like, gone.
I'm like, it's too bad. And he's literally like, you know, holding out his hand. He's like, I can help you. Like, here's who to call. Here's what to do. Here's where to go. And I'm just like.
But it's a seed.
Yeah, it's a seed. And I end up moving back to New York. And like, that's where like the alcoholism like really begins.
Did you bottom out in Ann Arbor again before you did?
So I like bottomed out. Well, yes, because like basically like the people who were left in my life had called my parents and were like, you have to come collect your child, like your 22-year-old child.
What were some of the things that made it the end of it?
Just like I couldn't pay rent. I'm like living in 2 apartments. I don't have a job. I'm drinking around the clock. I'm stealing from, you know, my roommate. I'm, you know, like these lovely people I was living with after I got kicked out of a house. Like I'm in another house, you know, I'm like a mess.
What do your folks say?
It's like basically like it's like the only sort of intervention there ever was where they basically like show up in Ann Arbor, surprise, with the car and they're like, we're taking you back to New York.
Surprise.
Yeah. and they were like very lovely and kind about it. And they're like, you need help. And so they bring me back to New York and it's like the first talk is like, okay, like, do you need to go to rehab? And like, I'm like looking and they're like, okay, do some research on rehab. And I'm looking up like rehabs with yoga. Like I don't do yoga, but I'm like, I can only go to a rehab where there's yoga.
It's like Kenya all over again.
You
can be a different person.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, but somehow like I am not, like I'm able to maintain this 6 or 7 or 8 month dry period where I'm like, okay, like I'm not drinking. Like I don't need rehab. Like AA doesn't even cross my mind. Like just like there's no like rehab doesn't cross my mind. Detox, I don't even know that detox exists. Like I'm just like, okay, I'm like abstaining from alcohol and you know, I'm not
no recovery though.
Yeah, like nothing. And it's like the most miserable period of my life. Like the most miserable period. Yes. And like now I have no friends because and at some point, I don't remember if it was before that or during that or after that. Actually, so it's like I'm dry and one of the reasons that I can like pin to that I am able to be dry is that I've lost my ID. And so I can't go get alcohol, right? And so somehow like after, 6 or 7 months, I get a new ID and it's like all of a sudden, like I'm no longer dry. And
it was a great restriction.
It was a great restriction.
People should suggest that to people.
It's wild.
To young people.
Exactly. And I somehow like end up like seeing an addiction psychiatrist and like he prescribes me like, which is wild. This is a whole nother conversation, a whole nother podcast, but like the things that like you can get prescribed as like an active alcoholic.
What did he
he's
offer?
prescribing me benzos and so now I'm like drinking and taking pills. And
what is he giving you?
I don't even remember. So it was some benzo, like
Xanax or Klonopin or
Ativan.
And how are your folks dealing with you?
Well, so the thing is that because I'm living with them and the rule is that I can't drink, is that I'm going through these periods of time where it's like I'm abstaining for 2 or 3 weeks and then like just having this like 4 or 5 day blackout. And it's like the same thing every time. Like you can't drink, you're not going to be welcome here if you drink. And at some point I take a sleeping pill or whatever I'm on and like end up blacking out on the phone with my best friend. And he's like, the next morning he texts me and is like, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, okay, I can never talk to him again. Like
because you knew it was coming.
It could have been like, I need to talk to you about my visit to New York. It probably was, I need to talk to you about the fact that you passed out last night on the phone. But it could have been anything.
And this is the pattern. Somebody spots like you're fucked and you're like, okay, I'm done with you.
Right.
What
I'm
do I
done
do
with
now?
you, or you're done with me.
Right.
Like it's even more like self-deprecating. It's not like you. It's just like, I guess like they don't want to be my friend anymore.
No, I think it's more like I can it's the disease or whatever saying stay with me. Don't listen to them. My precious. Forget about that guy.
There might be hope there.
Yeah. Or that guy is going to ruin everything we've built up. Everything
to get this relationship that we have.
Exactly.
So I end up like having nobody in my life, right? The only people in my life are my parents. My parents are like, if you don't stay sober, you can't live here. I go to a detox here. But I didn't even need it. Like I thought it was like rehab. Like I'm 2 or 3 days sober. I go to detox for 2 or 3 days. Like I think it's like rehab.
You're hoping it's like glamping or something.
Right. I mean, it's like public. It was like St. Luke's Roosevelt on 114th Street when it still existed. Yeah. And
it's not glamping there.
No, it's not glamping there. And they like lay out this like, you know, the next steps. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to take those steps, and sort of like repeat that pattern over and over again. And then I end up basically like, it's the last straw with my parents. It's like, you can't live here unless you do this, right? If you do this. And so I end up going to like a IOP program. And the IOP program's right near here. It was Hazelden, and now it's like Hazelden, Betty Ford by Hazelden.
Where is it?
Like a 26th and 8th.
No way. How do I not know about that?
I don't know.
That's crazy.
It's like Hazelden. Do you know Hazelden? You know Hazelden.
Sure, of course.
So their IOP program is like right here.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Because I was like right here and I didn't know about it.
And you had no idea.
No.
I mean, I didn't even know Hazelden existed till I'm there.
That could have been very useful to me.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So
I wonder if it's still there.
I think it is.
I'm going to seek it out.
Yeah, seek it out.
Anyway.
It's like on the 14th floor or something.
On
it's
26th
like
and 8th?
I think it's 26 or, between, like it's right on the corner.
All right. I don't
Look it up. Google Maps it.
I'll Google it.
Google Maps it.
Thank you.
So I end up there. I do, and I'm under the impression there's no such thing as a female alcoholic who's under.
Why?
It's like
You've
you could be
decided
a
that.
heroin addict, you could be a cocaine addict. That's romantic. But like just like a straight up female alcoholic who's like under the age of 50, like doesn't exist. Or alcoholics under the age of 50, period, don't exist.
Right. People cope with their drinking.
Right.
Or they can just drink. Right. They don't just stop.
Like it's so embarrassing. Like it would be fine if I had like a heroin problem or a cocaine problem.
Especially
or a
of that
program.
time.
Yes. But I'm 23 or 24 and like this is like so mortifying. But I get there and I'm grouped with a bunch of young people. And it just like blows my mind. I'm like, oh my God, these people are speaking my same language. Like these people have the exact same problems as me. I'm relating. I'm like, all my friendships before are fake. Like I'm like relating on
These
a
are my
level.
people.
Yeah. Like it was
they
this
were.
wild thing where I'm just like, I don't understand what's going on. And I end up staying sober for about 4 months. Like I found a 12-step program, a recovery community. I ended up staying for 4 months, staying sober.
Were you still at your folks?
I was still at my folks, and like everything's going great. Best 4 months of my life. And I'm just like, God, this is like, I'm never going to drink again. And then I start stealing prescription.
But where does it come from?
It comes from, I'm babysitting, and it comes from, a family that I'm babysitting, and I'm stealing prescription.
What were you taking?
It was Vyvanse, so like Adderall, Ritalin. And I'm like, oh, I've been prescribed this before. Like, it's fine. So I'm stealing now. And that's the high, right?
Sobriety.
Like, I love stealing.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Yeah, love it. And I'm like, yeah,
I wish I could steal and be sober.
I know.
But anyway,
I know.
Keep going.
So I'm stealing. I'm like feeling good. And I'm still like, I'm never going to drink again. And I'm still like justifying it. I'm like, but these were prescribed to me at one time. Like I could go out and get a prescription. I just like, I'm not doing that. I'm just doing this instead. And I end up, I don't remember.
And I think like you're in the fellowship you're in, there's kind of an illusion to not doing that, but it's
Right.
very much in the fine print.
Yeah, right.
It's not on the top lines of anything.
It's like live a good, healthy, honest life. But
It's in the fine print.
Right.
But it's like if you need to be prescribed medication, you should be. And I'm sure you were like, oh, this is close to that.
Totally.
This is similar to that.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. Right. Totally similar. Like
I never got prescribed any stimulants, and I desperately needed them in every way.
Yeah.
In every it's up to this day.
Yeah.
And like I don't do it.
Yeah.
Because I'm a addict.
Yeah.
And like I'm fearful of like what it will do to me. But just even hearing about like Vyvanse, like I've never taken a Vyvanse.
Yeah.
But I've read a bit about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it could really help me.
It's so interesting because I'm not prescribed, like I'm not on any mood alternative. Like even though like I have terrible insomnia. Like I did not sleep last night. Like it would have been so nice to pop an Ambien. Or like I have terrible ADD.
You
like
won't take melatonin?
I will. Yeah, but that doesn't work.
It works for me.
Really? It doesn't. Like I have non-addictive, and I'm very much on the like I'm not against prescription at all.
No.
But I know for me that like it would be dangerous for me at this point in my life to take a stimulant ADD medication. Maybe some point in my life it's ever crippling, like maybe that will be an option, but for me today it's not an option.
I would say we are both too functional to risk our functionality.
And that's exactly how I feel. And I'm like, okay, so I didn't sleep last night. Like I'm still here, you know.
One of the worst cliches is no one's ever died from not sleeping
I literally had this conversation with someone the other day.
The worst.
It's awful. Yeah, they told me that in rehab.
Yeah.
I was like, I haven't slept in 2 weeks. And they were like, scientific studies show that you only need 2 hours of sleep at night.
There should
I was
be
like, fuck you.
Should be think, easy does it, live and let live. And no one's ever died from not sleeping.
Voice.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you do? So you're stealing Vyvanse, making meetings, and what happens?
So my parents go out of town and I'm like, oh, and I'm dating this guy who's sober and I'm like so in love. And I'm like, I've never had a relationship where I've like, been able to communicate with someone like this. And I'm like, oh, his friend's in town visiting. Like I'm meeting one of his friends from home for the first time. Like, let me have a beer before I meet them. And I'm going to feel good.
How does that even
wild.
Right.
It's wild.
Right.
It's just an idea. And then that idea is in my head. And I'm like, I can't unthink that idea. Like it's like an impulse, right?
The consequences hadn't built up. And the sobriety hadn't built up.
It hadn't. Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, and I'm like half-assing sobriety. I'm like, okay, so these are the rules that are laid out. I'm a rule follower. I'm going to follow them, but I'm not going to be. And the other thing too is that like, and I left all this out in the past hour and a half we've been talking, but like, I'm under the impression that like stoicism is sexy. Like I'm like, from this family where like, like it's just like the idea of like sharing how I feel about anything, or like having any opinion other than like neutrality is like the idea that the words, like even at a young age of like that hurt my feelings is like, there's nothing less sexy or less like you can have feelings, you can like, be sad about something, but like nothing. And this was like a hard held feeling that I've like had since a young age was that. And like I talk to my mom now and it's like devastating to her that she didn't know that like
how stoic you were.
How stoic I was. Like I was just like I didn't like I remember one of my earliest memories is like and I think this is why I'm like, okay, this is why I feel like I was born an alcoholic or an addict, because this like feeling is so relatable to so many people who are alcoholics and addicts. But like, I remember my godfather died when I was 7, around the age of the Reuben Scissors thing. My godfather died of AIDS, like a really terrible death. He was like one of the most important people in my life, just like this shining light in my life. And he dies of AIDS when I'm 7, and I see him go through this horrible death. And my mom and brother are crying on the corner in the floor. And I'm like looking at them crying and I'm sad. And I'm like, I will not be part of that. Like,
why?
I'm like, whatever is going on over there, like I will not be part of it. And I remember sitting by myself on the floor, like against my bunk bed, being like, I will not cry. Like 7 years old.
Self-preservation.
Exactly.
It's interesting. Totally like some sort of denial or this armor. Like I see my older daughter has traces of that.
Yeah.
This coldness to prevent herself from getting hurt.
Yeah.
In these kinds of situations.
Yeah.
So it's like, I feel like where you were in your recovery at that point, it's like people who go to meetings or something but aren't in it. And like, I don't think you get in it and really in it until you're like, I need it. Like, and then I'm just going to do it.
Right.
And then you're still not in it.
Yeah.
You're only in it once something happens. Like, I don't even know how you get into it. Like, I don't know the difference between where you are and not being in it to when you do get in it. Like, that's the weirdest thing.
It's like that moment of grace. I love listening to that in like people's.
It's weird though, like where it comes from. You're sober in Manhattan, sober boyfriend, and you're going to meet your sober boyfriend's childhood friend, and you decide, I'm going to drink.
Yeah, right. So I like go buy like a 6-pack of beers and drink it before I meet them. And then I don't know if they knew I was like drunk that night, but then the next day I go meet them in Central Park, and I'm like, I go from beer to vodka. And I end up like not like being catatonic in Central Park
with
in the
them.
middle of with them in the middle, and they like called an ambulance, and like the
Not the
ambulance
adorable
right.
person that
Have
you
you
were
ever
hoping
seen an
for.
ambulance have to like pick someone up in Central Park? It's like they got to do all this crazy shit to like
Not off the path. No.
right.
Not,
Can't even imagine.
Right.
Like, and I don't remember what that's like. But so what ends up happening is that like over the course of 7 days, I end up in the hospital 6 times. Because like I keep drinking and I keep being unable to like get sober, and like the my rehab counselor is like, Janie, like what, like, and then this addiction psychiatrist that I'm seeing like now is like prescribes me a higher dose of whatever to help me like taper off of. Was I too close?
You were too far.
Oh, okay.
You were like,
Really?
yeah, this is the good stuff.
Okay.
We need every bit of it.
So he like prescribes me something stronger with the intent of like helping me with withdrawal, right? But it's like, I mean, like how fucking irresponsible. You're giving like an active alcoholic who cannot stop drinking something to help them with withdrawal, but like no indication that they're like actually like.
It just is so obvious how archaic the medical world is, and how the medical field has no understanding of addiction.
And he's an addiction psychiatrist. Like he's gone through years and years of like shrink med school.
It's like, why don't we just give her like the highest dose of benzos and just maybe it'll work out.
Maybe it'll go well with alcohol. Like
no, it's crazy. It's like there's just weird things in our world where we're not protected at all.
Yeah.
So he gives you some crazy high octane benzo.
Yes. So then I'm like drinking vodka on this benzo,
Which
and
is like
snorting Adderall.
Okay.
So it's like all 3 things.
It's all happening.
Yeah, it's all happening. So I keep ending up in the hospital, and like like the sober community that I've developed is like, what the fuck, Janie? And like, my parents are like, what happened? And then it's sort of like, the only option is rehab, like inpatient rehab. So now this, sober boyfriend is like literally flying me. Like, I'm not going to get on the plane without him. I don't think I actually said that, but that was like, everybody knew that. So it's like, he's this poor guy who's like, I don't know, 26, 27. Like I'm 24. He's like 2 years older than me. Is like, and he has his like 4 months sober, and he's like flying me to Minnesota.
You go to Hazelden.
To go to Hazelden.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm inpatient, and
how's Hazelden?
Beautiful, like amazing. Like it is like summer camp. It is like, and I wasn't, the thing is too, is like, I wasn't much of a cigarette smoker, and I picked up cigarette smoking at Hazelden because it's a rehab that allows you to smoke, and everybody else is smoking. And I'm like, I got to fit in.
Sure.
Like I'm going to
smoke. Nothing else to do. Might as well smoke.
But it is beautiful. So I'm like, every morning smoking cigarettes outside with deer scampering. It was June. It was beautiful. I had terrible allergies, and they like would not prescribe me more allergy medicine. So I'm sneezing all the time. Everybody's mad at me because I like cannot stop sneezing. But still, it's like the best 30 days of my life.
I feel like that's the least compassionate thing in the world is when my wife gets so angry at me when I have allergies. Oh my God. It's like, I'm dying over here.
I know people are like, Janie, stop sneezing. And I'm like, I would if I could.
I would love to not
like,
sneeze
I would
right
love
now.
to not sneeze.
Right.
So I'm, at Hazelden and I'm still not able to, and I'm like, oh, I'm never going to drink again. And I'd never had female friends. Like I'd had female friends, but all my closest friends had always been guys. And now I'm like developing a relationship with women and being like, oh, I've been hiding behind like relationships with men. And, I'm just like discovering all this stuff about me. And but I'm still like not quite able to like, I remember someone being like, okay, you need to like start doing this recovery work, and me being like, yeah, I've already done it. And then being like, what are you talking about? Like you're here with like 3 days sober. Like you clearly haven't done that work properly,
And why do you think, like, what do you think crosses your brain when you can say, I did it and you haven't done it?
I think is
it like a little kid saying, I know.
Yeah. It's like, I need to be
just defiant,
and not even like, I'm not a defiant person by nature, but I think it's just like, shame at not like, it's like, I want to know everything. I want to like, not admit that like I'm struggling. Like, I think it goes back to that stoicism thing. It's like, yeah, I've totally done it. Like, I know what I'm supposed to do. Like, you don't need to tell me what I'm supposed to do.
Because also Hazelden, to me, I've always imagined it's like the Mount Olympus of rehabs.
Yes.
It's like every standard is set there.
Yes.
And like everybody gets, it's got a crazy success rate, and they write half the literature that we get. And it's like, I get
and
it.
It's like really is. It's like the mecca of like recovery. Like it's beautiful. Like it's like they're not just like, they're not
fucking around.
They're not popping pills and hoping that you just like remain sedate. Like they are like, this is what we do. This is how we do it. This is the time you wake up. This is where you're going to be. And if you're not there, like we're going to know why. And they're helping you set these habits, right? Like these good eating habits, these good, like, make your bed in the morning habits, like these like
life habits
and spiritual habits. And like, just like everything about it is like health in every, like from the inside out. Right. And I'm like understanding that, and I'm like buying it, but I'm like not all in, Well,
you're still young. You're not done. It's just.
But I think I'm done. Like that's what's wild is that like when I was an outpatient, I'm never gonna drink again. Like, and I remember people being like, nothing's guaranteed. Don't say that. And me being like, no, like I'm never drinking again. Like you don't understand.
You were all in and believed it. Because why not?
Believed it. Yeah. But like still like I'm not able to like the idea of, people seeing the innermost me was like not an option. And I didn't quite understand that, but I'm like, yeah, you can like have that stuff, and you can like, I understand in theory, like, I'm supposed to be honest and authentic and like reach for the real Janie, but like,
you're not doing it.
I'm not doing that. Like nobody's ever going to see the real Janie. Like why would I ever let anyone see that? Like you don't want to see that. Like I've been trying to be someone else for the past 24 years so that you don't have to see the real me, and you won't like the real me if you see it. So,
and it's conditioned that your response is a conditioned response. It wasn't like a chosen response really.
No, it was just like, it was intuitive,
See, I feel like when I would go to rehab, my response was, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wasn't like I got this, or I was like, I'm not going to be sober at all.
Yeah.
But I didn't tell anybody that either. I just knew that I wasn't.
Interesting.
And like, either way, it doesn't really help anybody.
So why were you there?
Because
to take a break?
I couldn't afford to use. I wanted to get sober, but I didn't want it. I couldn't click into it.
Yeah.
I wanted to want to be sober.
Yeah.
I wanted to not be addicted to, and also with my addiction, when I couldn't afford it, I would just be sick. And then maybe I'd get a little bit of money, and then I'd be sick. And it was just bad. Like there was no life. And then my parents found out, and they were like, they kind of were out. They just stayed out of it until it was so bad that they sent me to a spot in Florida, and I went there, and then I still didn't get out of it though. I was there, and I had kind of the opposite response, which was, I'm not going to really do this. Yeah. I was like, I'm not really going to do this. I think my response was, I can smoke weed again.
Okay.
That was my
interesting.
That was my response.
But it wasn't like I can do harder stuff again. It was just like,
I don't want to do harder stuff. I just want to smoke weed.
Like sobriety light.
It was just like, I didn't want to be addict. I wanted to be a stoner, and I wasn't prepared to not be one.
Got it. That makes sense though to me. Like it makes sense why. Because I probably felt the same way in some regard.
But it's like, because you probably couldn't really swallow that you were like a leaving Las Vegas level alcoholic. And you're like, I can just drink.
Yeah.
Like maybe like there was those two beliefs. So how long were you in Hazelden for?
So I was in Hazelden for 30 days. And they were like, okay, so we think you should go to sober, like St. Paul and Minneapolis is like the sober mecca of the world, right? It's like so many halfway houses, such a huge recovery community. And they're like, we think that you should go to this young person's like house for 3, 4, 5, 6 months in St. Paul.
And there's great state like programs.
Exactly. And I'm just like, absolutely not. Like I have too much to lose, you know? And they're like, what do you have to lose? And I'm like, I'm in this relationship. Like, you know, I got my nanny job. And they're like, you don't have your nanny job anymore. And I'm like, yeah, but like, you know, there's so many. And like, I'm just like I
can't be here.
I can't be
I'm
here.
not going to do I need
like,
to drink in
St. Paul, like Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like I did 4 years in Michigan.
Right.
Like there's no way I'm doing, you know, there's no way I'm letting you like alter my life and spend any amount of time in the Midwest. And so, but I like still fully am like, it's fine. I have a sponsor back home. Like I have a home group. Like I have like, you know, I have whatever, like I got this stuff. Like I'm gonna be fine. And I, you know, get on the plane, just like fully being like, I'm fine. And there's this woman at the, like I'm at a restaurant, you know, like an airport restaurant. And this woman's like, oh, let me buy like, and I'm like looking at her. I'm like, she's such an alcoholic. Like she's so ridiculous. She's so out of control. It's like 10 a.m. in the morning. Like she's taking shots of Jaeger and she looks at me and she's like, you want a shot of Jaeger? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, Jaeger. Like Jaeger was one of those things where I was like, why do frat boys do Jaeger? It's only 17% alcohol. Like, do they know like that's not how you get drunk? But like this lady's like offering me a shot of Jaeger. And I'm like, absolutely.
On your way home from Hazelden.
On my way home from Hazelden. Mm-hmm. And then like I have a beer to chase that. And it's fine. Like I go back, I'm like back in my relationship. I still have these friends who are sober. Like I'm trying to live this sober life. And I'm like sneaking alcohol, but like really light. And I'm just like, nobody really knows. Like, and somebody will be like, oh, you kind of smell like beer. And I'll be like, oh, I had some sourdough bread earlier. Like, you know,
sourdough bread.
Yeah. Like, but so I'm like really, you know, and of course that doesn't last long. And then,
was that really a line when you smelled like beer? So you had eaten sourdough bread?
I don't know. Probably.
That's great. That's great.
Probably. I'm smart like that.
Very clever.
So it's like about a month or 2 months like that. It's like, and it's like a pretty good summer, you know, but I'm just like, I'm 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And like, I'm not drinking the way I want to drink and I'm not sober the way I want to be sober.
Well, you're not sober. You're drinking and going to meetings.
I'm drinking and going to meetings,
great.
But like drinking
you want
like
the social life.
Beer,
you want
right?
the social life of recovery.
Exactly.
Which is really interesting.
Exactly. Too. Yeah. And because like now I have friends again and I just like, I can't do it. And so I end up like, my parents are like, you know, we love you, but it hurts to be around you. Like you can no longer live here. And so I get this like apartment with this girl I met who was supposed to be sober. And then like, neither of us are sober together, but like I'm worse than her. So she kicks me out and I don't have a job. And I end up, and like nobody, like I can't move in with anybody. Like nobody will have me. So I end up going to this really awful like I go to another rehab and I go to a million more detoxes and I go to another rehab and the rehab's like, okay, we're going to send you, like you have nowhere to go. Like we're going to have to send you to a shelter. So I get sent to this shelter.
How does that, your parents won't let you go home?
My parents won't let me go home, which I understand. Like at some point, here's the thing. At some point I had begged my parents to go into Al-Anon. And
why?
Because like, I was like, okay, if you're going to have like like an addicted daughter, like you should
have the tools.
You should have the tools.
But then meanwhile,
it works, right?
Yeah.
It works. Like they learn to let go with love, right? And they learn to protect themselves. And like, it really worked for them. And like, I'm really grateful for that because I probably like wouldn't be alive had it not worked for them. So, I'm 24.
I appreciate that.
So I'm, you know, and truly, like, I really truly mean that. Like, I cannot imagine like what, like, I put my family through, right? Like, to see your daughter like killing herself every day and like not know where she is. Like, it's like, you know, the shit that I did to them. And, you know, and I'm like, it's like, I'm not that person, right? But like my addiction is like that strong that I am like a hellhole.
And they needed it. My parents went to Families Anonymous. And it was like the end of the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just and they needed it, and it was great for them, and ultimately it was great for me. But I'm just so shocked because you tell your story, then all of a sudden you say I go to a shelter, and like sitting with you, hearing your story, I'm not expecting
that
a shelter,
right?
Like, and how does that become your reality? Where does it even come from? Where do you go? And how much different is your life from every bit of this story to I'm going to a shelter in Manhattan?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't even have an answer to that. It's like I'll on my 25th birthday, I'm like checking into rehab in Long Island.
Which one?
I don't know, Seabreeze or something like that.
Seabridge or
some.
I understand.
Sea Smoke.
See something.
Yeah. And I'm
Seafield.
Yeah. So, and I, you know,
Seabreeze.
That sounds nicer. Yeah. So I'm, you know, in rehab there, and my insurance calls. I'm 14 days in, and they're like, I'm just like bullshitting, right? At this point, I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Fuck you. I've been to Hazelden. Like, you are a ghetto piece of shit. Like,
nice.
You know, like, I'm not like angry, right? I'm just like inside like that, because like what you see is still how I was when I was like I still was like,
right. You were just a snob.
Right.
New York
exactly.
City snob.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, fuck this. Like, you know, I know better than you guys. Like, I've been in recovery. Like, I've walked the walk. I've talked, like, you know, so I'm, basically like and the counselors don't like me. And I'm like, why don't they like me? Like, everybody's always liked me. Like, I've always been like the model student. Everybody's always liked Janie. Like, how come these people don't like Janie? And I, you know, have some little friends there, and, basically like insurance is like, hey, like, we're not paying for more than 14 days. And like the counselors like actually are not willing to fight, like, because there's a lot you have to go through. Like, I'm still under 26. So I'm still on my parents' like pretty good insurance. And like, they're like, we've had enough. And the counselors like aren't willing to advocate for me. Like, they say they are, but they're not. They're just like, why she doesn't deserve it,
right,
you know?
Right.
So then it's like, all of a sudden it's like, hey, by the way, you're leaving tomorrow. And I'm like, I don't have anywhere to go. Like, I thought I had 14 more days to sort this out. And they're like, okay, great. If you have nowhere to go, then we're legally obligated to drop you off at a shelter. So, and they you know, dropped me off at a shelter, and they set
Where was the shelter?
Somewhere in East Harlem.
Oh my God.
But what ends up happening is that I don't, like, they drop me off at a shelter, and they're like, we have these appointments. It's like maybe Friday. And they're like, we have these appointments for you next week for these like government run 3-quarter houses that you can show up to, you know, and live in.
Get a bed.
Yeah, exactly. And so they drop me off like outside this shelter, and I don't go in. And I like had this friend who I met when I was sober, who was also not sober. And I call him, and I'm like, oh, it's my birthday. And like, you know, I basically go like a weekend long blackout with him. He ends up kicking me out at the end of the weekend because his dealer who he's sleeping with is coming over. So I can't be there. And so, you know, I end up, I don't know if you remember what I did that night, but maybe like sleep on the subway or something, end up showing up at this appointment on Monday and end up in Phoenix House. Do you remember Phoenix House?
Yeah.
I think they're still around.
Yeah.
So I end up in Phoenix House, and somehow like they have like all these crazy like you know, hardcore 6-month, 8-month, like
therapeutic,
right?
What do they call it?
Not
TC.
even therapeutic communities,
Yeah.
like the like lockdown ones, right? Everybody else in this waiting room is getting sent to these lockdown ones, and somehow like I come in and I'm like somehow get them to place me in the aftercare, which is like a therapeutic community on the Upper West Side, and I'm like, this is perfect for me. Like, I somehow like, I'm so manipulative, I'm so smooth, I'm so good that I let them like convince them, don't send me to like rehab jail, like send me to rehab like Haven,
social,
you know,
social
exactly.
Life. Right.
So they send me to this TC on 74th on the Upper West Side. I'm like, this is great. I'm like back on the Upper West Side. Like I'm not paying rent, you know, I'm on, you know, Medicaid, whatever.
Right.
And so, and it's like,
you're thinking like an institutionalized person in New York City.
Yes, exactly. So quick. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like all these people who were like, you know, it's mostly men. It's all these people who were like, who are avoiding prison sentences and are there instead. And then it's me, and everybody's like, how are you here? Even the counselors are like, what are you doing here? What's a nice girl like you doing here?
I'm different. I just heard your whole story and I'm still trying to piece it together.
Right, exactly. And it's like, and so like I have that unique, like, what do they call it?
Terminal uniqueness.
Terminal uniqueness. And people are actually telling me I'm terminally unique.
Right.
They're like, what are you talking about?
You're
like
not
25.
like one of us. Yeah.
Yeah, you're 25. Like the patients.
You're
and
an adorable
the
white girl.
Exactly.
What are you doing
Yes.
here? And you heard my reaction. You're like, I went to a shelter in East Harlem. I'm like, oh my God.
right. What's she doing there?
Yeah,
Save her.
Yeah.
You know? And so I'm like, I'm there and I'm just like hopping around, like doing whatever the fuck I want. And getting upset when like I break a rule and you
get caught or something.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is I go out drinking one night, and I had done that before, right? I had drank there and I was like, it's fine because like the urine tests, like they're not testing for alcohol, they're testing for drugs. And basically like this counselor who like loves me is like, I'm giving everybody a breathalyzer tonight. And so instead of like taking the breathalyzer.
Did you think he knew? I
don't even know. Like, I don't think he did because I'd been drinking plenty before. I think it was just like the Saturday night breathalyzer night. And this guy was sober. And I end up basically like, instead of being like, yeah, let me take the breathalyzer and just like admit that I drank and admit that I'm wrong and like, what can I do to amend this situation? I'm like, oh, I guess I got to leave right now. Right. And so I was like, okay, let me go to the bathroom. And I just like leave. And I leave all my clothing there.
Stoicism is on display.
I leave like everything there.
So what happens to you?
So it's May of 2013. And I'm sort of like at the, like, I really have no more like, I don't know, last house on the blocks. Like I like just have no more like, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like some, I don't know, 2 or 3 week blackout. And I would really like be in blackouts for like 2 or 3 weeks and just like wake up in like really scary, like strange places. And I like leave the hospital like one morning and I'm like, I really have no place left to go. And I like call this guy and I'm like, and I can't like sit in a McDonald's like passed out.
That
like,
dude.
Yeah. So I call this guy who's like at this point, just like not willing to talk to me. And I'm like, I need to talk to you. And it's like 6 a.m. and we're like out on, you know, he's like, you can't come into my apartment. So he comes outside and I just like tell him the truth. And he's like, you know, and he's like mad, but like, he's not more mad than he was yesterday. Cause now I'm actually telling him the truth. And he's been like, he knows I haven't been telling him the truth. And he's like, okay, like, what's next? And I'm like, I need to go back to inpatient. And he's like, okay. And like, you know, I don't remember if he took me to the now St. Luke's is down on, they've moved the addiction center from 114th to 57th Street. And so somehow I end up there and they're like, we don't have a bed. And I'm like, I need a bed. I'll do, like, I'm begging for my life. I'm like, I will do anything for a bed. Like somehow I manage, like I stay there maybe 24 hours, like in their waiting room and like manage to like finagle a bed. And I'm in like really bad. So it's like now the rehab and the detox are together. So it's like I'm on, I don't know, what's the thing that they give you for?
Interferon?
No.
Sublocade? Vivitrol?
No.
What's that?
It's for alcohol.
Yeah, isn't it? Oh, it's antabuse.
No. It's the one, it's like a minor grade, whatever. It doesn't matter to like bring you out of, because like alcohol withdrawal is really dangerous, right? And so it's like tapering.
Phenobarbital.
No.
You're
like listening to all the drugs.
Clonidine?
Something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that was a lot of and none of them were the right drug.
No, none of them are the right one.
Sad.
I guess like different addictions.
Well, but I should know this stuff by now. But anyway.
It's going to come to me. But so I'm there and I'm just like in this haze, and I'd been to rehab and detox so many times before, but it had never been this bad. And it's really like 3 or 4 days where I'm just like, I had seen people like this, like on the ward, but I'm having like, like hallucinations and just like, I'm like in bad shape. And I kind of come out of it and it's like the same shit again for me. I'm like, fuck these people, like, and there was this, which still exists. There's this halfway house on the Upper West Side where they have, instead of like 1 million bunk beds in a room, they're single rooms. And it's on 102nd Street. And I'm like, that's the place I'm going to go. Like, this is the like creme de la creme of government run,
that's
for the
my
Medicaid.
spot, right.
Yeah, exactly. And like they like through these, 2 or 3 weeks that and it's like the sister, it's like
connected to St. Luke's.
It's connected to St. Luke's. And I'm like, that's where I'm going to go. And they just keep maintaining like, that is not where you're going. And I'm like, yeah, like there will be a bed by the time I leave. And it's just like, whether or not, I don't even know if like they were like, fuck this girl, she's not getting one of those beds, she doesn't really want it. Or if there really wasn't a bed, like I will never know. But they are like, you are not ending up here. So I end up like, it's the same story as the last rehab where it's like, I end up like, just, like after 21 days, insurance is like, yep, we've had enough. I'm on Medicaid at this point. And Medicaid's like, yep, that's it. So I got sent to, do you remember Narco Freedom?
I remember the names, the word Narco Freedom.
So Narco Freedom in 2015 got like federal charges, like criminal charges brought against them in 2015
For what?
From the federal government for like just like total misuse of Medicaid funds for basically like putting addicts through like this like through the ringer and not actually providing them services. And the CEOs of Narco Freedom are like now in jail for like taking that Medicaid money and buying private jets. So just like this terrible place, right? So I get sent to this 3-quarter house in the Bronx, this Narco Freedom 3-quarter house in the South Bronx. And it's like, 5 stories, like rickety, like all women, linoleum floors, rats, like actual physical rats in the space, bunk beds along the walls. And I'm like, what the fuck has happened?
This is,
like,
it seems like you're in the right place though.
Right. So I'm like,
really
what
does.
the fuck
At
has
this
happened?
point, it seems like you're in the right place.
And I'm like, if I had a safe place to get sober, I would be sober. Like, meanwhile, I'd had so many safe places to get sober. So I'm there for 2 or 3 weeks and I start going back to like recovery meetings and I start like, and I'd been going for the past year, but I'd been drinking in them and I just like, and I, sort of start to hear like that recovery message, but I end up having to go on like one more, 2-week-long blackout. And I come out of this blackout and it's like June and it's rainy and I'm soaking wet and I like, have been wearing the same clothing for days and I stink. And I call this guy who I knew was sober, like a different guy who was like creepy and sketch as hell. And he like picks me up from outside the hospital. I go across the street to Duane Reade. I leave the hospital. I go across the street to Duane Reade. I steal a beer because I'm like, and this is June 15th, 2013. And I steal a beer. It's 5:30 a.m. because I'm like, I'm going to have withdrawal. So I chug the beer. I call this, I don't even call this guy because I don't have a phone. I had like an Obama phone, a track phone that I had lost. And so I like go to the public library, which was like my move when I had lost my phone, was to go to the public library and like message someone on GChat. So I like messaged this guy on GChat and then like somehow he's like, okay, I'll come and get you. And he's this like creepy ass sketchy, like one of those like sober dudes who's like just like not actually sober, just like so creepy. He takes me to a hotel and he ends up, and we had like, hooked up before. And he like is like, oh, I can get you alcohol to help you with the
DTs,
whatever. Which I'm like, nope. And he's like hitting on me all weekend. And I'm like, nope. Like I'm just here to like, literally like I'm just there to like throw up and just be like, try to get my shit together without going back to detox. And so I end up like pushing this guy away all weekend.
Okay. This was a very important moment.
Okay.
You're in this horrible hotel with this really creepy guy who's hitting on you and you refuse to succumb to his will because you're just trying to be there.
Yes. So
I'm sure
like,
he's thrilled.
And like, it's like this poor guy. I'm like, are you the devil or are you the angel? Because he actually like did like, is somewhat responsible.
Right.
Or it was
probably both.
Yes. Right. So exactly. So, and my clothing stinks and like there's a little dishwasher. So we wash my clothing in the dishwasher. And for 2 days and 2 nights I'm there and I'm like refusing alcohol and I'm refusing to sleep with him. And like, I'm just like there's something different. And on the 2nd or 3rd day, like I leave And I call my mom and I'm like, I can't, I have to sort some stuff out with this 3-quarter house. Like, can I come stay with you for a night? And she's like, and I hadn't been allowed in my parents' house for like, I don't know, months and months. And she's like, yes. Like, there's something like noticeably different about me. And she's like, yes. And my god sister was
How much
there.
time did you have at that time?
2 days. 2 days.
And did you tell her about anything
I told
you
her
had been
some
through?
truth. I was like, there's something, like, I'm not at this halfway house I said I was. I'm at this point, actually, they had known I wasn't I'd been lying about
Did they know that you had been homeless?
I don't think so.
Did they know that you were smoking crack in SROs?
Definitely not. And I hope they do not listen to this.
Oh, I'm sure they're definite listeners to the show.
Oh my God.
So they don't know any of this at all? No, nobody listens to this stupid show.
Well, the thing, don't. Actually, people do listen. I've looked at your reviews on iTunes and Spotify.
Well, there's some reviews.
There's a lot of reviews.
Yes. Anyway, so you didn't tell your mother. You still haven't told your mother.
Well, so they've heard, I use the word homeless in press, right? And so
I always
heard
figured
that.
you weren't really homeless. You were just one of these
people do.
couch surfing homeless people.
A lot of people think that.
All these what's the word I'm looking for? These people claim homelessness all the time.
Yeah. When I did a thing with the New York Times, they had to verify that
How
I was
homeless were
homeless.
you?
Yeah. Because the editor was like, I don't want to write that she's homeless. And the writer was like, but doesn't this qualify as homeless?
No, it qualifies. There's so many people who come on and claim homelessness, and
but it was really,
they
were on their father's couch.
Yeah, they're
or
at their
something.
friend's house.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not fucking homeless.
No.
You're
sleeping
on the
subway
train and smoking crack.
Literally a couple of nights I slept in the bushes.
And I'm telling you this before we get to the good part. This
Yeah.
whole time I was like, she's gonna be at her friend's house. In my head, I'm like, she didn't really get homeless.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't
Yeah.
start in the beginning to say you were homeless.
Yeah.
But look at this.
Look at this. It's real.
Your story's up.
Yeah.
It's up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's up. I go to a meeting with an old time guy. He's like probably 75 and he has 30 years. And his story is like your story.
Really?
He was terrible.
He's don't see it. It's like a train coming out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what does your mother do?
So she says, okay. And my dad, who was like my best friend, and I had